Sekeres Price for Monday, February 26, 2024. We're coming to you from the Go-Goat Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. Extend your game night. Make it a staycation in downtown Vancouver. Call the Wall Center, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres Price rate. Some blackout dates may apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Jeff Pettersson, sitting in for Blake Price this week. Gritty Sass, hitting switches and conducting things with Madison Buckingham. It's a big show, all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group. We're right now at Applewood Nissan Surrey, the 23 Nissan Rogue, 24-month lease, 0% on select trims, the 23 Nissan Qashqai, 36-month finance from 2.99% on all trims, and the Nissan Leaf starting from $82 a week, plus a $500 loyalty rebate. As they say, it's all good at Applewood. Our poll question today we're asking, is JT Miller the team MVP? Yes or no? You can vote at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. Good morning. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sitting in this week.
Looking forward to it. Another big week for the Canucks, and what a night at the Raj on Saturday.
We're going to talk about it in a second, but first, give me your take on the poll question. Miller, is he team MVP?
I've been on Quinn Hughes' bandwagon all season long, and I think I'm still there just for the way that he has tilted the ice and brought his game up a level. And I wasn't sure that, his game was at a high level to begin with, but he leveled up. He's cooled a little bit here, and the way JT has played since the All-Star break, absolutely driving the bus for the Vancouver Canucks right now. There's enough runway here, I think.
Oh, yeah.
For it still to be an interesting debate. I'm still with Hughes right now.
Right.
But honestly, and I wrote about this at Canucks Army, that might have been JT Miller's best game in a Vancouver Canuck uniform.
Oh, it was fantastic. More on that in a second. 3 assist night as they come storming back to beat the Boston Bruins. I'm with you. I voted no because I'm still Hughes, but the gap is closing. And frankly, Jeff, Thatcher Demko and Elias Pettersson are not dead yet in this race either. With what's left of the season, either of them or both could make a case. I'll say this. I think this is going to be one of the tougher team MVP votes that we've seen in some time.
Yeah, and this is all fan voted at the end of the season, so we're 22 games away. I walked out of the game against Boston. They're at the 60-game mark, and I thought, 22. The playoffs can't get here quickly enough. So before the postseason, we will know. And yeah, and again, it speaks to the kind of season the Canucks are having, that they've got 4 legitimate MVP candidates. And oh yeah, the guy with 33 goals and scored twice in the winner the other night, he'd like in on this conversation as well, although I think probably a long shot at this stage.
I saw your tweet. Remarkable consistency from the Vancouver Canucks. What was it? 27 points, 28 points, 27 points.
Yeah, even I was a little surprised that because of the last week, it felt like the roof was caving in on them, and they haven't played that well since the All-Star break. But before the All-Star break, they won 10 of 12, and so 20-game increments, they have just been as even keel as you can get.
Well, let's get into our big story, top story, brought to you by Mr. Lube, and that is the comeback win against Boston, 3-2 in overtime. I saw your other tweet, JT Miller collecting his 50th assist. Boeser got his 60th point. Hughes his 70th point. 20th home victory for the Vancouver Canucks. Big round numbers. Miller with the 3 assists. Boeser with the 2 goals, including the winner. Shots 39-22 Vancouver. I was watching with a bunch of buddies at the bar, and we noted that the Canucks were out shooting Boston, but they were stuck on 21 there for a while. They wind up with 39 shots on goal. 82 points, leads the National Hockey League. Their winning percentage of .683, though, Jeff, has gone tumbling down to 5th place in the league. 33 regulation wins, continues to lead the league. 25-2 on home ice at Rogers Arena. I know you've chronicled this is looking to be one of the best seasons ever for the Vancouver Canucks on home ice.
Yeah, and I think you'd have to put Saturday's win right up there at the top. There have been a few others. The comeback win against Bo Horvat and the Islanders in overtime, grabbing a 3-0 lead on the Leafs and then squandering it and then rallying to win. And that was a Saturday, obviously, but Matt, that place popped on Saturday when when they scored all 3 of their goals. The first one that gave them some life, the tying goal that forces overtime, and then a power play in OT. I mean, how rich was that storyline for a power play that hasn't been able to score for weeks now? And it was 4-on-3, not 5-on-4. And so they went back to JT on the half wall, Boeser in front of the net, old times. And their wonder powers were activated. And then, yeah, it's been a while since I've heard the building that loud. Like, it really was something else.
Our friend Al Murdoch, PA announcer at Rogers Arena, his tweet after Saturday, amazing game for JT and great resolve by the Canucks in a 3-2 OT win. Absolutely blown away by the fans tonight at Rogers Arena. And your participation in the goal announcements and the 3 stars. Let's keep it going. Yeah, the fans are having a fun time with J.T. Miller. That's our top story today, and it is brought to you by Mr. Lube, 100% Canadian, started by a father and son team in Edmonton, the pioneer, of course, of the no-appointment oil change, warranty-approved oil changes, now providing tire service and sales, no appointment needed, 16 locations here in the Lower Mainland. Find the one near you. Go to mrlube.com. More on JT Miller here in a second. Our friend Harman Dial from Canucks Conversation, The Athletic. JT Miller deserves so much credit for a monster performance. Physical, hard to play against, and unbelievable playmaking. You mentioned operating off that half wall on the power play. You take a look at a game like that, Jeff, and that bodes so very well for the playoffs, because that was a playoff style hockey game Saturday against a terrific team.
Yeah,
at Rogers Arena.
That was as close to peak Ryan Kessler as I can recall. Plays over 20 minutes. He has 3 assists, so he's in on all 3 of the goals. 2 of them are primary helpers, including the winner. But even before they were scoring goals, Matt, like, he was into that game. He was matched up against Marchand and Charlie Coyle, and that's not an easy assignment. Jake DeBrusk, the other winger on that line. But JT matched his own team high, or his own season high and the team high, 8 hits on the afternoon, went 13-6 in the faceoff circle. I think he went 11 of 12 in the offensive zone. Like, he was just so dialed in, as he has been since the All-Star break. I mean, he has been their best player without a doubt. He's been consistent and consistently good. Didn't score, but had his fingerprints all over that comeback. And the piece that I wrote at Canucks Army, to me, it started, and you may remember, about 6 minutes into the third period, he comes off the bench. Höglander basically puts the puck on a tee in the slot, and he skated onto it. It looked like the All-Star, like, hardest shot competition. He just took this massive run and wound up big slap shot, and Jeremy Swayman made a nice glove save. But it kind of was a message like, all right, you got me this time, but we're coming after you here. And sure enough, they did. And you pointed the shots, 15-5. They were full value. Like, they spent most of that third period in the Bruins zone, felt like they wouldn't be denied. You wondered if they were going to come up a goal short, but ultimately Philip Hronek, who was wearing the goat horns for his defensive play on the first goal, the Boston goal where he got caught in the neutral zone and then just got flat-footed. But Philip Hronek with the big shot there from the point, Boeser the nice screen. And when overtime came around, and look, the Canucks had too many men on the ice penalty early in the hockey game. Bruins couldn't capitalize. Tables were turned, and that was too many. What a brutal line change by the Bruins. Nowhere to hide there. They had 4 skaters on the ice, and Canucks went to work on the power play and made them pay.
And you really have to screw it up in overtime. There's only 3 guys out there on the line change, although sometimes it might actually be more complicated because things are happening so quickly in the extra session. It is 79 points now for Miller. He's 5 clear of Elias Pettersson for the team lead. They both have the same number of even strength goals at 19. They both have the same number of even strength assists at 28, believe it or not. JT playing 19 minutes and 38 seconds a night. Elias playing 19 minutes and 39 seconds. So 1 second difference between these guys. You mentioned the faceoffs. He's up to 55% on the season, Jeff, and 156 hits, is second on the team behind only Dakota Joshua. Here's head coach Rick Tocchet on Miller's performance on Saturday.
I just thought his will tonight was strong, and I could feel a lot of guys. He was leading the way, and they were following him. And there was not, and like I said, he was really calm. He was one of the guys talking to the guys. Hey, it's only 2-0. Even with like 13 or 14 minutes left, he was saying, "Hey, keep doing the right thing." So That's the nice thing as a coach when you hear your leader say that.
Well, we know he's vocal.
Well, we think of this heart on his sleeve, engine is running, and now Rick Tocchet is trying to debunk that, telling us that JT Miller's bringing Zen to the bench, that he's putting like bonsai trees and a waterfall, and not getting worried when it's 2-0 and 13 minutes to play. The calm JT Miller apparently keeping everybody in check.
Yes, his feng shui is
who knew?
Off the charts here. Well, we talked about the atmosphere and the game at Rogers Arena, and of course it was bolstered by the return of the Green Men. We hadn't seen them in 8 years, not since 2015 at Rogers Arena, but Force and Sully were back in full garb, full regalia with all their props up to their hijinks in those two seats right beside the penalty box. Now, for a moment there, I'm not sure we were going to get the best out of the Green Men because Boston wasn't doing its part in taking very many penalties.
No.
Although you could tell that James Van Riemsdyk, he got a kick.
Yeah, there was quite a smurf there.
Stifling the smile. And as a matter of fact, we're going to have Green Man Force coming up on the show here. I got to say, the reception for them was huge, not just in Rogers Arena, but across BC with Canucks fans and even beyond, Jeff.
Surprised me a little. I don't know why. I thought maybe they had their 15 minutes, but they are part of what the Canucks have. You think back to the height of the heights, and they were there, and so people, I think, associate them with good times, and certainly they're fun. Don't get me wrong here, but I was a little surprised at the pop, but I loved the surprise element of it, the fact that they kept tight-lipped and didn't tell anybody, and the way that they had Al Murdoch in on the intro. I mean, it was already a good atmosphere in there at the Bruins. You knew that, the early start, all of those things. And then you get the Green Men showing up. And so just added to the fun. And also we should mention as well, Arshdeep Bains' home debut.
Right.
Now, he didn't figure that prominently.
We're going to get to him in a second here.
But there were so many storylines and so many layers to what went down there on Saturday.
And that video you saw on YouTube, courtesy of the Vancouver Canucks, who of course were on hand to capture the big surprise as the Green Men came out to the Stone Cold Steve Austin entrance music and made their way down to their seats. Little more difficult to do at their age, as you'll hear Force say here in a little bit. Okay. Excuse me. Elliot Friedman, Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, saying teams are calling Vancouver to see if Elias Pettersson is available. Now, as you know, Jeff, the Vancouver Canucks are trying to tamp down all the noise surrounding Elias Pettersson and his still unwillingness to negotiate on a contract extension beyond this season. They're telling teams that they are trying to sign him, but a couple weeks before the trade deadline, teams understand the boat that Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin are in. They know they would prefer to get an answer from Elias between now and the deadline, if not an extension. It helps in the team building process. It helps inform some of the deadline moves you may or may not make. This is effectively the natural evolution of having a player of this caliber be unsigned this late into the season. I mean, other general managers would not be doing their jobs if they weren't calling Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford right now and seeing where they stand on Elias Pettersson. There is no world by which they would trade Pettersson by a week from Friday, March 8th.
They're trying to win a Stanley Cup this year, and he is, despite all this noise, he's a huge part of what they put on the ice on a nightly basis. He is not getting traded before the deadline, but it is starting to get more curious. Like, I wasn't sure that it could get more curious, and there just doesn't seem to be anybody that has a true read on what he's thinking, where this is going, and so Elliot has his report in the second intermission of the early game. Well, it was the Canuck game on Saturday. Sunday at practice. And look, we see Rick Tocchet almost every practice start by spending time on the ice, one-on-one, fairly deep conversations. Just so happened that it was Elias Pettersson on Sunday. And I would love a transcript of what those two were talking about. Is he happy here?
Like-
Is he not? If not, why not? Is it affecting his play? I think a lot of people now feel that it is affecting his play. But saying that, like, for all the love all of a sudden for JT in the market, since the All-Star break, Miller's got 12 points, Pettersson has 10. So again, there isn't a lot to separate the two, but boy, right now it just kind of feels like there's this massive gulf in terms of fan perception and the sides people are taking.
Do you think there's any part of Pettersson that was naive to the way this would play out if he said, I don't want to negotiate till after the season? Like, surely his agents, two of the biggest in the game, prepped him and let him know, okay, Elias, in advance of the trade deadline, if you're still unsigned, be prepared for this sort of noise. Do you think there's any part of Elias that was naive to the way this would play out in the market, Jeff? Or do you think he knew full well that it would create a lot of noise, a lot of distraction, and just chose to deal with it?
But don't JP Barry and Pat Brisson have like the handbook for
Of course.
star athlete?
Of course.
So even if he's naive, the agents say, hey, this is how it's going down. Would he have been better served on the first day of training camp to say, look, I'm not talking about this. My choice is to negotiate after the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably in hindsight, but he has sort of played this aloof. He's been questioned a couple of times, but again, I think the people in the market that thought the media was going to be clubbing him over the head on a daily basis with questions
Hasn't happened.
Has not happened at all. Like, he has been given his space to operate in that regard, and still, like, there's just no clarity whatsoever. So I'm with you on the team building side, like, because I get, like, for the names the Canucks are attached to, I don't think they want to get in on rentals. Like, I think they want to be able to approach players if they trade for them and be able to re-sign them.
Including Elias Lindholm.
But you need to know at the top of the food chain, the guy that's going to take up the biggest piece of the pie.
Not to mention the fact it is politically unwise to bring in players and give them contract extensions prior to Elias Pettersson. It's ass backwards in terms of the team building exercise, but there are also political sensibilities here. Now, I know Blake has said all season long, too bad the business of Canucks sports entertainment and the team building has to go forward. And if Elias is saying he doesn't want to negotiate until after the season, then that's the choice he makes, and he has to understand that there are consequences. Let me ask you this. Do you think the hesitancy has anything to do with his relationship with JT Miller? We know they're not the closest of buddies, but if you're Elias Pettersson and you want to win a cup, you have to feel like there's another frontline forward on your team that's going to help pull the heavyweight, lift the heavyweight, and be a part of the solution. Do you think it has anything to do with JT Miller, the hesitancy to sign?
I can't sit here and say no. I want to believe, though, like, you don't have to be best friends with the people you work with. And I think that goes across the board to just about anybody in any sector, that you get paid to do a job. Like, is it a high-profile job in this place? Are people scrutinizing his every move? Absolutely. But when the puck drops, I want to believe that Elias Pettersson and JT Miller are pulling on the rope in the same direction, and then are good teammates regardless if they go out for
and all the evidence suggests that, Jeff, at least for this year.
But I suppose the broader question is, is there enough oxygen to go around? That JT is going to be here for a while. And if Elias commits long term, now earlier,
and JT has an outsized effect on the culture of that dressing room.
Without a doubt. But like a couple of months ago, there was a suggestion that, maybe Pettersson would go the Austin Matthews route and go shorter term. And I still think that's a distinct possibility when you look at the contracts of Thatcher Demko and Quinn Hughes and sort of the way they all line up and what could be the true window for this organization. So there are ways where he doesn't have to worry about coexisting with JT for 7 or 8 years. Mm-hmm. It could be a shorter term deal here. I thought it was fascinating. And again, we're at that point in the program now where every word, even when his name isn't mentioned, gets parsed. After practice on Sunday, Rick Tocchet was asked about Sidney Crosby. The Penguins are coming in for Tuesday night. And again, this is me. I'm reading too much into it. I get that, but I couldn't help but go down this road. So Rick Tocchet was asked about Sidney Crosby, and marveled at what he's doing at his age. And he had a 4-point afternoon in a Penguins win over the Flyers on Sunday. And Tocchet said, we played them a couple of weeks ago, and Sid was the best player on the ice. And I'm thinking to myself, Elias Pettersson had a couple of goals, including the winner in overtime. And again, it just sort of feels like I don't think that there was anything to that answer. But
it's all in the interpretation and how those two ears are receiving all of this.
But it wasn't 2 years ago. This was a couple of weeks ago. And Pettersson, it was the height of the lotto line just surging. And Tocchet offers that, Sid was easily the best player on the ice. He was good that night, but so was Elias Pettersson.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it has anything to do with all the crap that he's been through with this organization? We're talking about a franchise that completely mishandled COVID, if you may recall, on a couple of occasions. The different coaching changes, the lack of winger, the owner wanting to be chummy with players, all the different things and the taps being turned off after the bubble run, all the negative experiences that he's had here with the club since his debut.
I think there's lived experience, certainly, but it's a new management group. He's on his third coach because he arrived with Travis. So, but times change and the fortunes of this hockey club change. And I'd like to see or think that he could see a path forward here. Like, I do wonder, does a lengthy and successful playoff run change anything for Elias Pettersson, or has he made up his mind and he just hasn't let us all know? All of that said, sure, like ownership's the same. There are still some people in the organization that are around, but there's been so much changes as you have well seen. So I think the other thing too here that he has to be mindful of is be careful what you ask for. And if he does want out, you could wind up in places that aren't anywhere close to Vancouver on the world stage.
But who knows what tickles his fancy? Do you think fishbowl environment is something that he chafes at? I mean,
I do. I mean, it's just not his favorite part of the job. But again, like he sat in the locker room yesterday. Nobody asked to speak to him. There was no request. So he just sat in his stall while the media was at the front of the room and others were doing, like, it's not an everyday occurrence. As much as people think the scrutiny in this marketplace, he's front burner and he's talked about every day, but he sat and looked as relaxed as possible in his stall there yesterday. So, I think there are a lot more days like that than people realize.
Yeah.
But clearly, I mean, when his name is on that whiteboard and he has to do media, it's obvious that's not his favorite part of being a star hockey player.
All right. Well, he centered his own line free of Elias Lindholm, and they practiced that way on Sunday as well. So that's Miller with Boeser and Pius Suter. That's Pettersson with Höglander and Mikheyev. That's Lindholm with Bains and Garland. More on Bains here in a second. Bluger, Lafferty, PDG on the fourth line. I mean, Höglander's there, good, but Mikheyev is back there on his right wing. What was your take on the first time we've seen the three stacked centers, Miller, Pettersson?
I was shocked, honestly. They didn't have a morning skate because of the early start. So when they came out for warm-up, there was a part of me that thought Ilya Mikheyev may have played his way out of the lineup on Thursday in Seattle. Now he's back with Pettersson, and I was incredible. I mean, guy's got one goal in 31 games. They've played 60 games, and so he has one goal in the last half of the season that they've played so far. That just doesn't seem right or fair to Elias Pettersson to have to, try to prop that up on a daily basis. I understand what Tocchet was trying to do. He was asked about it on Friday out at UBC, how much longer could he go with Elias and Elias because they just hadn't forged much of a bond. And he did talk about the fact that they're both natural centers. So I guess in that regard, I wasn't shocked to see them go deeper down the middle with three centers and Teddy Bluger. Like, that's pretty solid center lineup. But again, you take the shape of this group and you move people around. If you take Elias Lindholm from your top six and give him his own line, it exposes some real weaknesses on that winger depth. I mean, Boeser scored twice the other night, leads the team in goals. Connor Garland has had the nice season for the role that he has found himself in. And you talked about Höglander, but almost every line doesn't have what you would consider a legitimate top six, like Mikheyev. Suter's not a top six winger when he's perfectly placed. And then you've got Arshdeep Bains, who's trying to find his way. But is third line winger the best spot for him on a team that's headed to the playoffs?
Or is the fact that Dakota Joshua is out of the lineup giving him the license to break up that terrific third line? Like, would you worry about Garland's play going forward away from Teddy Blueger and Blueger's play away from Connor Garland?
I like the idea, Matt, of Joshua when he gets back with Garland and Lindholm, because you've seen here recently, Teddy Blueger's been set, like Arshdeep Bains in that debut in Colorado, set him up for a couple of grade A looks. Teddy Blueger hasn't scored since the first game since the Christmas break. Elias Lindholm is a more polished, better finisher. So for all the good that line had done, and I thought Lindholm had a good 200-foot game the other night. Coach mentioned that as well post-game. The idea of Garland, Lindholm, and Joshua as a beefed-up third line, I think would be great, but what does that mean for what's above them in the lineup? So, they used Teddy Blueger on the fourth line to, in the coach's words, to stabilize that fourth line. That's an area that's not getting talked about enough to me. Is 2 weeks out from the trade deadline, that fourth line has evaporated.
Well, let's talk about it here, because Frank Saravelli of Daily Faceoff and our weekly Friday guest has connected them to Minnesota Wild forward Brandon Duhaime. Now, he cautions that, look, Duhaime plays for a team that is still hoping to make the playoffs in Minnesota. I'll read from Frank's tweet. Canucks have been keeping close tabs on Minnesota Wild's Brandon Duhaime. It's no lock Duhaime has moved with Minnesota in a playoff chase, but an intriguing piece on the trade target board. This is a former BCHLer, Jeff.
Who spent a year in Merritt.
Exactly. Even played a handful of games in West Kelowna prior to matriculating to Providence College, to the Wild Farm team. This is his third National Hockey League season. Now, he's not a big scorer, just the 6 points in 58 games. He's played 12 Stanley Cup playoff games, no points there either, but a bang and crash penalty killing winger, and in fact is one of the principal penalty killing forwards for the Minnesota Wild, ranking fourth amongst their forwards in shorthanded time per game.
Yeah, 26 years old, from Coral Springs, Florida. He's listed at 6'2", 200, so he's got some decent size. Matt, he was a terrific rookie. I mean, he had 6 goals and 17 points, but 122 penalty minutes, and was a pain in the ass to play against. Across the board, it just kind of feels like his play has fallen off, so maybe he would be expendable in Minnesota, but he leads all Wild forwards in penalty killing time, so absolutely there's some penalty killing utility there, and I mentioned that because of who he would probably be replacing in the Canucks lineup. And you look at the fourth line guys, and really the only reason that they are on the roster, like Nils Amon, when he's in there, the only thing that he brings right now is penalty killing utility. And same goes really for Phil DiGiuseppe, who was such a nice story out of training camp and earned that spot alongside Miller and Boeser. Like, he has just vanished as well. And even Sam Lafferty's play has dropped off, to the point that Rick Tocchet last week in Seattle on Thursday, before the morning skate, I was just talking about a bunch of things. And I asked him about his fourth line, and he admitted, like, there is no identity there. And the money part of the quote to me was, to go a long way in the playoffs, you need a fourth line with an identity. So It's pretty clear. We know he loves his big defense. They've built that for him. I wonder if the Canucks are going to try to overhaul this fourth line here with a piece or pieces ahead of the trade deadline, because it just doesn't model the way Rick Tocchet wants his team to play right now.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's a 200-pounder on a team that doesn't have a lot of sizable guys. He's also a UFA this coming summer, making $1.1 million, so he should be an easy piece to add, albeit if they're looking to do more, then the cap space starts to run a little bit thinner. Of course, they have Carson Soucy on LTIR right now, so they do have some space there. We'll see if they can manage that space through the final quarter of the season here. Arshdeep Bains playing on that third line with Lindholm now at center and Garland. And let's hear from the head coach, who gave a rousing endorsement of the rookie from Surrey's first week in the NHL.
I'm not completely satisfied, if I'm going to be honest, and I feel like I could do a little bit better, but at the same time, I'm pretty proud of the way I've been playing, and I think there's more for me to give, and that's kind of the exciting thing. But at the same time, I feel like I got some looks, some scoring chances, and there's been some opportunity there, and I'm getting a good ice time. So I think it's going to be a good recipe if I keep heading this way. I think good things will happen.
That's Arshdeep himself, and good to know that he's not satisfied. And yeah, he had those 2 glorious scoring opportunities in his first game. In fact, I think his first game was his best game.
It was, yeah, without a doubt, and started that night on the third line. He earned the promotion in Seattle, didn't do a lot with that. The other night against Boston, there were moments. Didn't love the holding the stick penalty 200 feet from his own net, early in a game that's hyped up, and all of a sudden you're putting your team down a man. So, hopefully that kind of thing can be eradicated from his game. But 3 games, 2 penalties. The first one in Colorado, I think, was, he didn't try to get in on the forecheck and a little overzealous maybe. Still looking for his first point, a couple of shots on goal, I think 3 shots through his first 2 games. But, they've put him in a position to succeed. Like we talk about the fourth line being a bit of a ghost town right now. He hasn't touched the fourth line. Is there a world in which, when all the dust settles and Joshua comes back, that's where he slots in to sort of be that dog on a bone and bring that energy. I think that's possible still for Arshdeep Bains. But yeah, he's been all right. Look, the hard matchup against McKinnon in his debut, that's a pretty big assignment.
Yeah.
And then the other night, it's the Boston Bruins. Like he's 2 of his 3 games with the Bruins and the Colorado Avalanche.
Absolutely.
And a Seattle team that was firing on all cylinders.
Yes.
So it hasn't been an easy week in that regard. Funny.
You almost want to pull him aside and say, son, it gets easier from here.
I thought this was kind of funny that for a guy who's played 3 games in the NHL now, the father's trip, like there's a lot going on. Sunday was his first full practice with all of his teammates. He was on the ice at UBC on Friday, but it was optional and the stars weren't out there. So he got 3 games under his belt before he got a full practice with the rest of his teammates.
Well, I got to say, we'll play the Tocchet clip now. It's extraordinarily high praise for a guy I thought had one terrific game in Colorado and then a couple of, middling games, if you will. Here's Tocchet on Arshdeep Bains.
I'm a big fan. I like him a lot. I think there's another level, and that's when playing in the NHL. He's earned a spot right now. I don't know how long it's going to be. Maybe it's the rest of the year, but he's earned a spot. I know guys enjoy playing with him. I've had a couple of players come up to me individually and say, "Hey, don't be afraid to throw him on my line." So I think that's the ultimate compliment for that kid is, that a lot of players want to play with him, but he's also doing the little things, and that I love. Really good on the forecheck and handle the puck, and he's not scared. He gets inside.
Yeah, he's earned his spot, and maybe for the rest of the year. It's a little unconventional to be hearing a head coach speak in those terms about a rookie off such a small sample size. Now, that guys are asking to play on his line, great sign there. And I'm sure probably fueled some of those comments from Rick Tocchet. And I'm glad he singled out his composure, because really from the moment that he stepped on he may have been doing the duck thing with a lot of paddling underneath, but he looked pretty calm, pretty collected, like he was meant to be there, like he was ready for the moment. In some ways, it kind of harkened a Chris Tanev, a Brock Boeser, the type of guys who stepped into the Canucks lineup and did not look out of place from the jump.
Haven't confirmed it with JT, but it's my understanding that JT was one of the guys and that's like he played with JT and Brock in Seattle in his second game. And so kind of a fascinating wrinkle to all of this, that players are saying, guys come up from the minors all the time, but you don't hear that veteran players want to play with a guy. So they gave him the opportunity. I'm with you, though. I still think the debut in Colorado was his best look. And the other thing, too, is for a young guy that's trying to find his way, he started against the Avs with Bluger and Garland, then has 2 new line mates in Seattle and Miller and Boeser.
Right.
Now, the other day, he's got Garland again, but now he has Lindholm. So 3 different lines in 3 different games. Like, that's hard to forge chemistry. And through it all, impressive. Take the local guy out of it and the cultural aspect. Those are all huge stories. But just in terms of the hockey player that Arshdeep Bains is, kind of had that chance yesterday in the hallway after practice just to assess those first 3 games. And that's where he said, to be perfectly honest, not fully satisfied. Loved that part of the answer. But, I asked him, do you feel like you've been able to play your game at this level? And he said, yeah, I think for the most part, the speed has not been an issue, that it's faster, obviously, than the American Hockey League, but he thinks that he's been able to keep up in that regard. Like the fact that he had been able to generate a little bit. And, he's been on the ice for 3 goals against. And I'm not pinning them on him, but you want cut that down, cut the penalties down, and hopefully that somewhere along the line some people convert some of those opportunities that he's been able to create.
It's a great point on the one practice and now 3 different sets of line mates. And heck, it could be a 4th, Jeff, depending on how Mikheyev is doing alongside Pettersson. I wouldn't be surprised, especially after hearing Tocchet say that guys have asked to play with him, that he's earned his spot and that he likes them on the forecheck, which of course is one of the staples. That's something we can't do without. That's why Andrei Kuzmenko is not here. And incidentally, Kuzmenko looks like a now healthy scratch for the Calgary Flames. Or he got sick, he got scratched because of illness, and now he is practicing.
They win the Battle of Alberta.
The 13th forward, exactly, about not changing a winning lineup.
I should just mention, Matt, too, that it's my understanding, I didn't see with my own 2 eyes, but it's my understanding that both Dakota Joshua and Carson Soucy skated again before practice on Sunday. I did see them skate in Seattle on Thursday, and that's encouraging at the very least. Tocchet is just loath to give any updates at this time of the year. So when I asked him, he just said, they're making progress. They're getting closer. But the fact that Dakota Joshua is back fully uniformed skating, I don't think it's going to be the 4 to 6 weeks that maybe some people thought if it was a truly broken hand, but we still don't know the full extent of the injury.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was my next question with regards to when Joshua comes back into the lineup. I mean, I think it stands to reason he's going to play with Connor Garland. They had such great chemistry, whether Lindholm is the center, whether Bluger is the center. Does that push Bains to the Pettersson line? And does that recycle Mikheyev down to the 4th line where he's fighting for ice time with PDG and Lafferty? Because to me, that would be sort of the cleanest way to go about things, unless Ilya Mikheyev somehow breaks out here against Pittsburgh and LA this week.
Yeah. Boy, it feels like that ship has sailed. I'm not even sure what would constitute a breakout at this stage, but hey, they'd take any offensive contribution. I mean, at some point, maybe you get a look at Pettersson between Bains and Höglander and hope that the 2 wingers there, a little bit of time spent together last year in Abbotsford, some familiarity, but just more similar styles in that they're fearless, getting on the forecheck, try and get some pucks to Pettersson so that he can make some things happen, because it just feels like offense is going to die on the stick of Ilya Mikheyev, who had
and that's
2
the
chances
problem
there when it was 2-0 in the 3rd period, and they came to him, of all the people, to get those chances in this game, but they stuck with it and ultimately got the goals that they needed. But yeah, it's getting hard to watch Mikheyev on a nightly basis.
And that's the problem, Jeff, that just maybe Bains is a little more comfortable with the puck on his stick right now, that is a more useful component to the Elias Pettersson line, especially if Nils Höglander is going to be on the other wing, as you say. Penguins in town Tuesday to face the Vancouver Canucks. Look, if we talked about at the beginning of the month, Chef, they have a great test coming up because they play all these good teams in February, and then they play these desperate teams. And look no further than the Seattle Kraken on Thursday and how desperate they played. Look no further than a week ago today in Minnesota, that matinee, and how desperate the Wild were in the 3rd period. Not to mention earlier in the month, we saw games against Detroit and Washington who were quite desperate. Is Pittsburgh still desperate? 9 points out with a bunch of teams to jump. Of course, no Jake Gensel tomorrow. That would have been a very delicious little sidebar, but he's not going to play for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We may very well be looking at the Pittsburgh Penguins as we have known them for the last time here in Vancouver, depending on the way the rest of this regular season goes and whether Kyle Dubas feels like there's a requirement there to change things. I mean, I think everybody says Sidney Crosby's going nowhere, but you've got to wonder about the rest of the Pittsburgh Penguins if they miss the playoffs again this season.
Yeah, and I think this will be a telling week for them as they work their way through Western Canada, and if it continues to slide, then I think that'll tell Dubas all that he needs to know about this year's group. And, I would think that Gensel goes. Beyond that, who knows? But look, Sid can't play forever. And how many more visits to this city will there be for one of the true legends of our time? And I love the fact that this thing ties into that it's the 26th of February today, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
The game will be on the 27th.
All right.
Of course, the anniversary of the
Mhm.
golden goal on the 28th.
14 years ago, and with all due respect to Alex Burrows and Kevin Bieksa, the biggest goal in the history of Rogers Arena to win the Olympic gold medal. Okay, let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta. I know you had duties in Seattle. You missed a hell of a party.
I was disappointed about that. I would have
Thursday at Greta. We had a blast. So thank you to everybody there at 50 West Cordova. Great spot to catch the game throughout the season. Quick walk to the Rinker Stadium. Go-to spot for food, drinks, fun before, after the game. Make it a game night at Greta, 50 West Cordova, or at gretabar.com. As mentioned, we're going to talk to Green Man Force here in a second. The first time we have seen the Green Men back at Rogers Arena in 8 years. He takes us through the entirety of how this came to be, including the mechanics of dropping the surprise on everyone at Rogers Arena. And there was a very tight circle. It was almost like a trade deadline seeker. It was a very tight circle of people who knew about this surprise performance. We will get to some hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter, including some news from Vancouver Whitecaps FC, who begin their season Saturday at BC Place against Charlotte in the MLS opener. Of course, have already played in the CONCACAF Champions Cup as a tune-up to the regular season. We'll also talk to Irf Gaffar. Irf's got some great info on Chris Tanev. We'll talk to Jed Gensel, Phil Kessel, where things have gone awfully quiet with Phil Kessel, Jeff, as well as Ilya Mikheyev and the agent Dan Milstein there, wondering about the future of this player in Vancouver, not to mention Elias Pettersson and the calls that the Vancouver Canucks are now taking on their star centerman, still unsigned, less than 2 weeks to go prior to the trade deadline. Jeff, your first go here at Sports Interaction Best Bets. What you got on the menu here today?
Well, if people enjoyed the Canucks and the Boston Bruins on Saturday night, and I know that the Canuck fans certainly enjoyed this game more than the one in Boston a couple of weeks ago, but could this market handle a Canucks Bruins Stanley Cup Final 2.0?
Oh my goodness. Talked about it last week for a moment.
If you think this is a possibility, and we're not asking
vengeance,
the outcome here, just the fact that two of them, if they got to the Stanley Cup Final right now, that matchup, 34-1.
It's gone down a little. I think it was 36-1 when we checked in on it last week. But could you imagine how delicious that would be?
Honestly, I'd have trouble wrapping my head around it.
I am going not all is well with German giant Bayern Munich. I mean, this is a club that is accustomed to waltzing its way through the Bundesliga and elsewhere across Europe. And this weekend came word that Canadian Alphonso Davies will be heading to Real Madrid either this summer or next summer. Bayern faces Lazio in Champions League play on Tuesday, and with everything swirling around that club and having a difficult season, I'm going to take the draw. Not brave enough to take Lazio to win, but I'm going to take the draw, paying out at 5.25 if it happens to end tied after 90 minutes or so. That's your Sports Interaction Best Bet. Sports Interaction, your homegrown sports book and casino featuring custom props, parlays you're not going to find anywhere else, plus a best-in-class casino, thousands of games and live dealers. For those of you on YouTube, scan the code there and get a 200% welcome bonus from Sekeres Price. Sports Interaction, bet local, must be 19 years of age. Please play responsibly. Green Man Force coming up next.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey set up as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Well, it had been 8 years since we'd seen them at Rogers Arena. Quite a surprise on Saturday, Jeff, when the members of the ESPN Sports Fan Hall of Fame, the Green Man, Force and Sully, showed up, and we're joined by Green Man Force here on Sekeres Price. How you doing?
Good, boys. How are you doing? That was a fun weekend.
It sure was. So tell us the genesis of all this. How did you guys make your triumphant return to Rogers Arena?
A lot of planning, a lot of kicking around ideas, a lot of should we come back, share it over beers. And yeah, it was the Canucks have been asking us for a couple of years. It's like, would you be interested in coming back? And we hummed and hawed, and we really liked the way we went out, did our big retirement tour all over BC, going to WHL games and BCHL games. And I think it was 6 Canuck games our final season. And we thought we got a good reception and let sleeping dogs lie. And Sully now lives in Saskatoon. He's got a wife and 2 kids, so he's like doing his thing. So to get him out here logistically was tough. But the Canucks started the season so hot. Canucks reached out to us in October and said, "Hey, if we flew Sully in, would you be interested?" And we said, "Yeah, but we kind of want to do it our way." So we wanted to pick the game. We wanted to pick how we entered. So like right down to the Stone Cold Steve Austin entrance music, that was us. And oh man, it was a blast. I was nervous. I've never been nervous in the green suit before. And my mouth went completely dry right before we ran in, and that reception was I had goosebumps.
Well, and I also understand this was about showing off the Green Men to new family members.
Well, that's exactly it, right? We haven't been around in 8 years, and I mean, when I started the Green Men, I was 21, and I fit in the suit very comfortably. And reading online comments this past weekend have not been kind to me. You never want to do that, but I'm like, guys, I'm 35. I'm not that out of shape. But yeah, I was single. Sully was single at the time. As I mentioned, he's now married with 2 beautiful daughters. I'm now married, and we're expecting our first baby girl in June. And my wife was a Div 1 softball player in Utah during that 2011 through 2015 run. So she doesn't know the Green Men. She wasn't a massive hockey fan at the time. And so that was my motivation for coming back, was for her to see it firsthand. So she had a ticket. She was there on Saturday. She watched, and she was thoroughly confused by the entire situation. And yeah, she did contribute all the signs we held up. She insisted she wanted to draw those because she didn't like my penmanship. So that was her contribution to the cause.
Great.
I love the element of surprise. Now, I think Canucks Twitter kind of let us all down after we got those photos of Phil Kessel at the airport a couple of weeks ago. I thought, I'm guessing Sully wasn't wearing his outfit when he flew in from Saskatoon, but I thought somebody might have picked up on that. But look, this kind of sounds like a dumb question, but we're also talking about 2 grown men in bodysuits that rub up against plexiglass. I guess there are no dumb questions when we put it in that context. But when do you become the Green Man? Because the element of surprise was there. Like, I don't imagine you both rode SkyTrain in full suits on Saturday. Do you just pop into like a Rogers Arena bathroom and suit up, or did the Canucks have a room for you? Because I did love that element of surprise that you knew it was coming, but nobody else did.
It was awesome. So in previous years, when we were doing our Green Man thing, like the Green Man lore is that we would change at the Costco parking lot across the street, run across the street in the green suits, and then run into the arena. And that's kind of how people saw us. For us to come back, we're like, look, we kind of need like a room to change in where we can hold our props and then time it out properly. So that was our idea, is like the first TV timeout, it'll kind of give them an intro if they want to. Al Murdoch actually wanted to do the voice of God thing for us, which we thought was so cool. And then the timing was just perfect. Of the 14-minute mark, that's right when Van Riemsdyk took the penalty. That obviously was not planned. And we entered and ran down and just went wild. It was so much fun. And yeah, the timing couldn't be perfect. The lack of penalties and the lack of goals until late in the game was extremely concerning, but we made the most of it.
Yeah, and the Van Riemsdyk thing was terrific. Like, you could just see him stifling his own laughter there. So good on you. It's not just the fans, even the players were recognizing that you were around and getting a kick out of it.
Hey, Force, how much are you guys aware of the reaction of the crowd, the reaction of, in this case, Van Riemsdyk in the Bruins penalty box? How much, because I know they're not exactly see-through, but how much are you guys aware of the reaction to you guys as you're performing?
Yeah, it's a bit of a blur. I totally forgot that aspect of it. Like, it's been 8 years. So running down, I was so concerned running down the stairs after our intro that I was going to trip. I was just like, that was my main focus, is do not fall on national television. But getting down to the box, it's kind of bright by the ice. I could see JVR kind of smirking, so I knew something was happening. And then once you can kind of feel that crowd pop, you know that you're on the screen. The seats now with the new massive scoreboard, we couldn't really tell what was going on. So we would kind of just sense throughout the game. Anytime a big cheer happened in between plays, we assumed we were on camera and just started dancing and doing our green spandex thing. And I think Sully set a new record for like 15 handstands. He must be sore this week.
I was going to say, was it like riding a bike?
It was. I'm very sore. I'm not gonna lie. Like I got a bad knee. It's like I should have worn a knee brace. Sully was very nervous. He was practicing handstands in our changing room before the game. So yeah, it was cool. But yeah, the timing of that JVR penalty kind of brought us right back into the zone. The one other fun part of it, and we've always talked about it as green men, is you go around, you're high-fiving people and stuff. You change out of the suit after the game and you're walking the street as a normie. And you can't click it off. Like I went to high five strangers and they're like, it's Vancouver. That doesn't fly. And it's just, it's a weird mentality to try and fix.
Now, once upon a time, and we have a little bit of the backstory, the seats there beside the penalty box, I believe Sully's father had those as season tickets.
Yeah.
But no longer does. So did the Canucks hold those seats back for you guys for that game?
Yeah, so Sully's dad gave up the tickets in, I believe, 2015. He had them since 1990, and when we retired in 2015, he let them go. He had the L, where he would take two clients and wine and dine them and talk over their shoulder because he owns a roofing company on the North Shore. And so when we approached the Canucks, or they approached us, we said, yeah, but it's under the condition we need those seats back. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this, but there are some season ticket members who have those seats. And they realized the power position they were in, and they got a lot out of it. They leveraged it hard. And I heard that they scored themselves some free playoff tickets as a result for giving up the season.
Well done. Well done. Well, good on them for giving it up, because really the bit needs to be there.
Absolutely.
Right,
Yeah. The Canucks did float it. Like, could it work somewhere else? No, it absolutely cannot. It had to be those seats.
I'll say this, you're still beloved across the continent. Did you see all the big sports media and social media accounts that were marking your return?
I was telling you guys before we were on air that I didn't tell anybody. My wife knew, Sully's wife knew, and Sully's parents knew. So it was awesome to have some of my friends being like, are you kidding me? You didn't tell me this? So when I got back to my phone, like I've never had that many text messages before. It was wild. So that in itself was actually really exciting. And then, to see all these major sports accounts posting us across the board. And you just kind of hope that you're like looking a little svelte in the green suit if you're going to be splayed out across national TV. And it seemed to work out for the most part. But my Twitter has not stopped blowing up.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you're 35 now, a little bigger in all the right areas, though, of course. So I'll tell you that for free. The bits and the props for those who missed them all on Saturday. What did you roll out?
The lack of penalties was hurting. So in the third period, we just started like dumping them all. The one that I don't think got any TV time we were really excited for is we're famous for doing our Canuck cutouts, and you pick a player or a fan from the opposing team. And we had Bill Burr in a Canucks jersey, and he had played Vancouver the night before, so we were hoping he was going to be at the game, and it never made TV. So that one's too bad. The other one, Sully brought a giant inflatable unicorn, and then I had a giant mop bucket, and we just gave him like a unicorn shower. It made no sense. It's a typical green man. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Mm-hmm. What else do we have? We had some we brought back the waffles. That was the one in overtime with Trent Frederick, and I mean, that's a classic. Going over, I felt that was nostalgia. Going across the street to Costco like 30 minutes before puck drop and buying a giant box of waffles. That was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And then it was mostly just dance moves. We had it all planned out. We did a Bill Belichick hoodies. He always has the cutoff sleeves. I don't know if that made TV. And we had the Belichick headset and a clipboard that said Mac Jones is elite. So we had some fun. Yeah,
and you had the biggest Homer sign with Homer Simpson and Jack Edwards, the Bruins play-by-play guy.
That was a bit of a risky one. I knew the Canucks were never going to show it on the big screen. I knew it wasn't going to make TV, but I wanted to put it out on social media. And as I expected, the Bruins fans are vicious.
Yes, I would suspect so. Okay, well, last question here for us. I mean, they're going to the playoffs. You're part of the club's DNA and part of the crowd. What do you think? Green Men coming back in April?
I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say yes. I have Scout's honor that we actually don't know. I mean, Sully living in Saskatoon, working a Monday to Friday. Logistically, it is extremely tough. But the Canucks have dabbled and said, hey, like, if you are interested, let us know. And after that reception on Saturday and the overwhelming response on social media over the last like 48 hours, it's going to be pretty hard to say no. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if you see us back at the playoffs for at least one game, but who knows?
yeah. Well, we'd love to see you, and congratulations to you and Mrs. Force, because we'll have a third little green gal
In a little baby
coming
green suit.
in
Yes.
June. So you're going to need the little green suit at some point as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jeff. You guys are the best.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.